The Velhari Palace had 43 trained guards on the night shift. Not one of them reached Princess Saraveth in time. The assassins had planned well. 3 entry points compromised simultaneously. Communication lines severed with surgical precision. The guards at the eastern corridor were down before they could draw weapons. Not killed, just incapacitated with a neurotoxin that smelled faintly of copper and left no marks. Whoever had sent these killers had done their homework. What they hadn't done was account for Elise Whitmore. She was folding the princess's ceremonial robes when the lights died. Not the slow flicker of a power fault. A clean, deliberate cut. Every emergency beacon in the eastern wing went dark in the same half-second. Elise set the robe down without a sound, moved to the window, and pressed her back against the wall beside it. Her hand found the small blade she kept strapped inside her left sleeve. Not standard issue for a palace maid. But Elise Whitmore had never been standard issue anything. She'd grown up in Marseille, 3rd arrondissement, which was a polite way of saying she'd grown up learning which shadows were safe and which ones weren't. She'd put herself through 2 years of close protection training after her sister was mugged, mostly because she needed something to do with her hands and her anger. She'd taken the palace position because it paid well and because she genuinely liked Saraveth, liked her dry humor, her curiosity about humans, the way she asked questions like she actually wanted answers. Elise pressed her ear to the wall and counted. Footsteps. 2 sets. Moving too quietly to be guards. She crossed the room without a sound, touched the princess's shoulder once. The signal they'd established 3 months ago, during a drill that Saraveth had initially found absurd and Elise had insisted on. 1 touch means wake up and don't speak. 2 touches means get under the bed. 3 touches means run. Saraveth woke instantly. Elise gave her 2 touches. The princess, to her credit, didn't ask questions. She slid from the bed and folded herself beneath it with the practiced calm of someone who had finally, after months of gentle pestering, started taking their human maid's paranoia seriously. Elise moved to the door. The first one came through fast, a shoulder check meant to break the lock and surprise anyone standing directly behind it. Elise wasn't standing behind it. She was beside it, and the moment the door swung open, she was already moving, one hand catching the arm, her weight dropping low and twisting in the way that used momentum rather than strength. The assassin, tall, Heathian by the look of the neck ridges, wearing civilian clothes that were too clean, went into the wall face first and didn't get up. The second one was smarter. He'd held back, let the first one go first. He saw what happened and adjusted, pulling a sidearm from beneath his jacket. Elise threw the first assassin's body at him. It wasn't elegant. It worked. He stumbled. The shot went wide and burned a hole through the curtain, and in the 2 seconds it took him to recover, Elise had crossed the distance and gotten inside his reach. Close quarters work was ugly and fast, and not at all like the practice drills. It was sweat and adrenaline and the sharp, specific fear of being shot at, and she moved through it the way she'd trained herself to move, not thinking, just responding. He went down. She zip-tied his wrists with the restraints she kept in her apron pocket, which was another thing the other maids found eccentric about her. She retrieved the sidearm, checked the charge, and went back to the bedroom. Clear for now, she said quietly. But there are more of them. Saraveth emerged from under the bed with remarkable dignity. How many? At least 4 more. They came in through 3 points, which means coordination, which means someone with access to your guard rotation. Elise checked the window. We can't go down. We go up. The roof has an access panel behind the second chimney column. I checked it my first week. She handed the princess a heavy ceremonial robe, better than nothing, and moved toward the servants' staircase. Do you trust me? Saraveth looked at her. You just put 2 assassins through a wall. 1 wall. The other one was a floor. Elise opened the staircase door. That's not an answer. Yes, Saraveth said. I trust you. Vincent Mercer was running. He'd been running for 4 minutes, which meant he'd known something was wrong before the alarms failed, because Vincent had been the one to notice the rotation anomaly in the guard schedule 3 days ago and had been quietly watching ever since. He was the palace's senior human liaison officer, a position that sounded administrative and was mostly administrative, except for the part where he'd spent 11 years in protective services before taking the diplomatic posting, because his knees had started complaining. His knees were complaining now. He ignored them. He took the eastern servants' staircase because it was the fastest route to the princess's quarters, and he was halfway up the second flight when he nearly ran headlong into Elise Whitmore, coming down with the princess right behind her. They stared at each other for a half-second. "Mercer," Elise said. "Whitmore," he said. Then, to the princess, "Your Highness." And then, because there wasn't time for anything else, "There are 3 more on the main floor and at least 1 on the roof." "1 on the roof," Elise confirmed. "I heard him land. He's good, barely any sound. But he shifted weight near the second chimney column and I was listening for it." Vincent processed this. "You were listening for someone on the roof." "I always listen for someone on the roof." He decided to address that later, possibly never. "There's a secure comms unit in the eastern chapel. If we can reach it. 2 floors down, through the main corridor." Elise was already calculating. "They'll have the corridor watched, not the crawl space above it." Vincent pulled a maintenance diagram from his jacket. Actual paper, folded, the kind of thing that wasn't on any network. "I pulled this 3 days ago when I noticed the rotation anomaly." Elise looked at him. He looked at her. Something passed between them. The wordless recognition of 2 people who had both, independently, decided that being paranoid was simply good professional practice. Saraveth watched this exchange. "Are all humans like this?" "No," they both said simultaneously. The crawl space was not designed for comfort. It was designed for ventilation and maintenance access, which meant it was approximately 60 centimeters high and smelled of dust and old wiring. Elise went first, pulling Saraveth behind her. Vincent came last, dragging the access panel shut. They heard the assassins below them. 3 voices, speaking in Keithian dialect, a regional accent from the outer reach, which told Vincent something useful about who'd hired them and why. He filed it away and kept moving. The chapel was dark when they dropped through the ceiling access. Vincent went straight to the comms unit, bypassed the standard handshake protocol that would have taken 90 seconds, and used the emergency override that took 3. The signal went out encrypted, flagged priority, routed directly to the palace command center that was physically separate from the compromised wing. Backup arrived in 6 minutes. In the 7 minutes before that, while Vincent held the chapel door and Elise held the side entrance, no one got through either. The assassin from the roof tried the skylight. Elise heard him a full 4 seconds before he came through. She was ready. He was not. The debrief took 3 hours and covered things that made the senior Velhari security commanders deeply uncomfortable, not because of what had happened, but because of how close it had been and why. The guard rotation anomaly that Vincent had identified. The emergency protocol that Elise had insisted on establishing with the princess months ago. The maintenance diagram. The restraints in the apron pocket. One of the commanders asked, with genuine puzzlement, why a maid carried restraints in her apron pocket. Elise looked at him for a moment. "Because pockets are for useful things," she said. "And useful things are for emergencies." The commander didn't have a response to that. Saraveth, sitting across the table, had the particular expression she wore when she was deciding something. When the debrief concluded, she waited until the room had mostly cleared, then spoke quietly to both of them. "I'm dissolving the current guard contract," she said. "I want to discuss new arrangements." Vincent looked at Elise. Elise looked at the princess. "Your Highness," Vincent said carefully, "that would be a significant operational change." "Yes." Saraveth folded her hands on the table. Her neck frills had settled, the Velhari equivalent of calm certainty. "I noticed that my 43 trained guards did not reach me. I noticed that the 2 humans who did reach me, one of whom was carrying my robes at the time, kept me alive through a situation that your security apparatus failed to anticipate." She paused. "I intend to learn from that." Elise said nothing, but she was already, quietly, thinking about staffing levels, about training protocols, about the crawlspace maps she hadn't finished memorizing yet, about the roof. There was always the roof. 43 guards hadn't been enough. 2 humans, a folded diagram, and a blade in a sleeve had been exactly enough. Sometimes the difference between survival and catastrophe wasn't firepower or numbers. It was the person who'd already decided, long before the crisis arrived, that they were going to be ready.